the distance. Now, the UAE's journey to the future begins. Welcome to the Future Innovation Summit.
Good morning, good evening, depending upon what part of the world you're in. If it's Friday, it's the CEO series where we bring together global leaders, entrepreneurs, disruptors, and innovators. Our guest today is Dorian Webb. She's an award-winning designer and creator of jewelry, home decor, and art for the luxury market. To give a little context, she began her career as a jewelry designer while a student at Yale University studying architecture. At our first trade show, the line was picked up by Neiman Marcus. Essence magazine featured a pair of her earrings on its cover, and they were picked up again by Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Rihanna, and Halle Berry. As one of 12 designers nationwide, she was selected for the 2021 Emerging Designer Diamond Initiative, which seeks to diversify the diamond industry. Her first collection for this initiative, Quality to Equality, featured diamonds and 18-karat gold. She's recently expanded into the creation of fine works of art on paper. These works include large-scale watercolors, frame prints, complimentary note cards. And with that, I welcome you. Dorian, how are you?
Good. Excited to be with you here this morning.
Yeah, I am too. Because as we was talking earlier before we went live, I said it's been a long time. So anyway, it's good to have you here. So, architecture to jewelry design, it's a lifestyle. How did that happen? Walk us through that transition.
Yeah, well, I think to give a little sense of my background. When I went to Yale University, it was definitely something that I was excited about. But I think I think growing up in sort of a middle class with a middle class background, with parents who were very involved, I think that I originally wanted to go into art. But I think that on my parents' part, there was a little bit of reluctance for me to follow that path, and a little bit of concern about how I was going to make a living. So for me, architecture was in some ways kind of a melding of something that was creative, but at the same time a safe choice that made sense. And also in studying architecture, I realized that there were a lot of clothing designers, especially the Italian clothing designers, Armani, Versace, all of kind of the larger names, studied architecture as a foundation for their business. And they studied that because architecture fundamentally teaches you how to think about spaces. It teaches you how you experience the world around you. It gives you a sense of composition, but in three-dimensional sense as well. So those things are things that just really help you in any design field. So when I went into Yale, I was excited about architecture, but I think it was probably not a surprise to anyone when the moment I graduated, I changed career paths. And that path started to change when I took a trip to Italy during my junior year and saw Venetian glass beads and wanted to make something with them. And when I returned to campus, I made up these beads into various pieces of jewelry, and I gave them to a photographer who was showing his work at galleries in the area. So he took the pieces to those galleries and they started placing orders. So I was in business. And it was a bit ago, so I got a fax machine because that's what you did.
Yeah.
And then started from there. Happy to say that the jewelry found an immediate audience. And then from there, I continued actually with working with Venetian glass beads. You can see some of the beads and beadwork in the chandelier that's behind me. And
Okay.
that was part of a traveling 7-year traveling museum exhibition that I embarked on with a fiber artist. That
Wow.
was about it traveled to various museums and galleries throughout the United States, and the theme was polyrhythmic polyrhythms in African American art, which is something that I actually come back to again and again in my work.
Yeah, I saw that. Wow, that's an amazing. I don't want to say because I would have that architecture could tie into that creative side, and the background on the Italian kind of approach to that was really. I mean, that's amazing to hear because never would have thought that. So that was you were able to take that knowledge and come out of school and not look for the assignment to design a building, and you
Mhm.
just use it for another type project.
Yeah, exactly. Same tenants, same thought processes, same systems of kind of evaluation. But it's for me, it was just a way to create things that were a little bit more personal, a little bit more immediate, and that I could truly shape on my own.
Mm,
Whereas architecture nowadays, it's really hard to be able to create an entire building yourself and to really control every aspect of that building. Whereas jewelry, it's something
okay.
that you can,
Yeah.
and you do have that connection to people, which for me is what it's actually really about. Just having creating something that someone puts on their skin that makes them feel good, or that lights up their eyes, or that enables them to see themselves as other people already see them. I think that's where the true beauty lies in what I do.
Mm. Well, I worked for Martha Stewart for about 10 years, and one of the designers told me that same story. They said that the difference between working here as a startup, they are allowed to design the entire tabletop setting, as opposed to working for a Calvin Klein and one of those kinds of organizations. You're only going to do a piece or segment, and somebody else takes. So it's like a production line kind of. And that is that the same kind of process you're talking about?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I can be as involved in any aspect of the process as I like, which is nice, and it just enables me to really kind of control the output of what I'm doing, and I think that just being able to connect with that creative process on a regular basis is why most people go into creative fields, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's something that over time is seems to be lost when you have to kind of get more into uh, the the inner workings of running a business.
Yeah, the business side of it, which is totally
Yes.
different from the
Yeah.
creative side. And
Yeah.
that was one of the challenges we had when you're talking with a design and they're having 5 or 6 meetings and I'm like, that's costing us X amount for each one of these meetings. We need to make a decision and move on from there.
Mhm.
So talk us through so you said you were able to sell that because when I was reading your bio, your first show, you go there and Neiman Marcus for the global audience, Neiman Marcus is one of the top department stores in the U.S. Little trouble, COVID, post-COVID, but that must have been a heady moment to whoa the
It
entire
was.
world.
It was actually funny. So I guess before I did that trade show, I was going door to door, visiting stores and selling my work that way. And I quickly realized maybe it took a day, maybe it took a week, that was just not the way to do it.
Yeah.
Because you show up at places, people aren't there, or they reschedule, or they're out of business, or
Mm,
whatever the case may be. I mean,
mm,
retail is kind of an interesting
yeah.
world in and of itself.
Mm,
So I decided, okay, well, let me figure out a way I can get in front of the most vendors as possible, or the most retailers as possible. So I discovered that there's a trade show in New York, and I participated in that trade show. And it was my first time out, kind of designing a booth and getting all of my work out there. And so I was, pretty pleased with the way that it came out, and had some success in sales in the first day. And the second day, the buyer from Neiman Marcus stopped by, and she took a look around, and I knew that she was where she was from because all of the
Yeah.
buyers wore name tags.
Everybody knows who the big shots are, right?
Absolutely, you've got to. So she came in, and we had a nice conversation, and then she looked around the booth and she said, "So, do you think that you could make some jewelry with this?" And I said, "That's a great idea. I think I can. Yes, exactly." So it was so funny. So we made an appointment for the next week to show her the revised line. And to this day, I have no idea as to what she thought I was selling at that time. But I showed up with it again on nice velvet trays and everything else,
Yeah.
and she purchased the line, and we were off and running.
Oh my goodness. I mean, so when you think about the business side of it, someone comes up with an idea to be a creative, and you're knocking on doors, it's not working, but to be able to close that first deal, that must have presented a lot of momentum to move forward, because you have that brand beyond that, because that rebrands you because you've sold to Neiman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And for me, starting out, it was really that was really an important and pivotal partner, and also just enabled me to get into other retailers that I otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And it also just made me it made me realize that the power of kind of your partnerships and your network, and how that so much determines the areas in which you can kind of travel in, the circles at which you can go, and the levels to which you can rise.
It's validation. I mean, when you've been validated by Neiman, I mean, you can't go much higher than that in that market. That they are interested in, and your line is carried there. That's got to be huge.
Yeah, and it just leads to other opportunities. And I think that because starting your business is always so, I mean, as you know, like so fraught with self-doubt, and there's always things that are coming up that are difficult to deal with. Having someone say, which you know to be true, is your things are good, or you have quality, or there's something there that people love, or that there's meaning, that really helps.
That has to be, an exciting moment. The other key point that you mentioned in your bio was that the Essence cover, and all of a sudden your products are now being worn by Michelle Obama, Oprah, Rihanna, Halle Berry. I mean, you're talking about hitting it out of the ballpark from the word go. Everything kind of fell into place beyond that.
Well, it's funny. I mean, that's kind of the condensed view, but but yes, I mean, and in doing those trade shows, I was able to meet stylists. So while my jewelry is worn by a lot of celebrities, I'm not often having tea and coffee with them.
Yeah.
But it is rewarding to see that they are selecting my pieces for their, the moments in their lives that matter.
So, one of the things you mentioned, but because when people see someone doing what you're doing, successful, they don't understand all of the underpinnings of that. The self-doubt you talked about, and the voice in the head. How do you manage that? How did you manage that as you were trying to move beyond the structured approach to a career? You chose something, but then there was all of the things that came along with it, all of the luggage that came along with it. How do you manage that positive mindset?
Well, I think there are the 4 levels of competence. So I was definitely on the first level, which is unconscious incompetence.
Yes.
So I did not know what I was doing wrong. I did not know. I mean, when I started, I didn't even know what an invoice was. I mean, someone had to kind of educate me on that, because I had very even little work experience and zero work experience in the jewelry industry. Um, but I think that people responded to my earnestness. I
Hmm.
think that I think also by not having that training, that there was, I guess, something that the fashion world holds dear, was kind of made evident. That freshness, I think that they call it, but freshness
Hmm.
can be interpreted in various ways.
Hmm.
And the other thing is that, I mean, I was lucky to have a family that did not quite understand what I was doing and why I was doing it, but they were supportive of me in my efforts to do it.
Okay.
My mom has her own business and she still runs it today.
Mm.
So she had an idea of what it was like to be an entrepreneur, to what it was like to be a female entrepreneur, what it was like to be African American female entrepreneur in an industry that does not always recognize you. Which, I
Yeah.
mean, granted, now that is changing.
Yeah.
So I also had an ally in her.
Okay.
So that was wonderful. And my dad, who had a background that was more, people in that era either they would go into areas of business that were thought of to be solid and where you could get a good pension and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
He just, I think had trust that it would all sort of work out,
Yeah.
and also just saw the joy and the recognition that I was getting even early on for what I was doing. So
Yeah.
I think that kind of helped. But it is really difficult if you don't have that support,
Yeah.
if you don't have that support system. Um, for me, that was really what enabled me to kind of to make it through those difficult times.
Yeah.
And also, again, friends who were supportive of what I was doing, who saw the pieces that I was creating, who also purchased them way before I crossed paths with Neiman Marcus. Like those
Mm.
kind of things were really, really helpful to me.
Yeah. It's funny you told a story about your parents because my father was a business person, and he wanted us to go to college because he didn't finish school, and he wanted us to follow in the footsteps of doing all these kinds of things. And I'd hear him talk about his vision for us, and I'm like, nope, don't want to do that. Don't want to teach school. Don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I will do what I can do until I can do what I want to do, which is what I did. And he
Mhm.
didn't really go along with what I was doing. But after a certain period of time, he was a little proud, and he came by this business venture that I had at one time, and I saw him standing out looking at the sign. It was a convenience store, and
Mhm.
he was kind of proud, in doing that. But when you have that kind of a background, you're not as afraid of it as someone starting out and that you have no connection. Not that it can't be done, but
Mhm.
you had a sounding board there.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So as you started from in the business that you're in now, talk to us about the diamond industry because I'm like, whoa, and that's it's called Emerging Designers Diamond Initiative. What is that
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, so I think, well, as you know, that with the pandemic, and the death, the murder of George Floyd,
Yeah,
that there were a lot of changes in various industries, and there was a kind of a greater awareness of what a lot of people had also been kind of drawing attention to, prior to this. But I think everyone's attention was kind of drawn to
yeah,
inequalities, and that was just kind of laid bare. And the diamond industry is one of those industries that also realized that they had to, quite honestly, they had to do better. That there had to be for them to kind of continue and to honestly also reach the markets that they need to reach,
Yes.
that there has to be a way in which they are supporting African American or people of color, the work of people of color, and helping to diversify their industry. Because the diamond industry is one that is, even in industries that are kind of opaque, is just incredibly so. It's hard to find pricing for diamonds. It's hard to know, even if you, I mean, I've been in the industry for almost 30 years now, and to know where to purchase diamonds. You go to a diamond tear, a diamond tear to purchase diamonds, and there's just it's just a lot of it's just a very insular world. And to give you some idea of how insular it is, most of their transactions are literally done on a handshake. So someone will give you $20,000 worth of merchandise on a memo, and you take that and you look at that and you sit with it for a little bit, and the stones that aren't going to work you send back, and you pay for the pieces that you purchase, usually within like 30 days. And then sometimes you have even longer runways to be able to pay for that merchandise.
Wow.
So you can imagine, if you don't have that access, I mean, someone giving you that amount, and that's just $20,000 is just like, I mean, that's just a small kind of startup amount. Yeah, exactly, on a handshake.
Yeah, on a handshake.
So you have to have that. You have to have those relationships in place already. You have to have those connections. In all of this time, I've never had those connections. I've never known people who would be able to give me that access. And now working with the Natural Diamond Council, I'm able to have entree into that world, to be able to work with or arguably the finest stones on earth.
Wow.
And all because of this initiative.
Yeah. So they chose a certain group of people across the globe. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it was a competition, and the first group was a group of 6 people throughout the United States, and they're now on their second year of the program. So another 6 people have been added.
So as a result of being a part of that, you can make these deals. When I say make these deals on consignment, that you have a certain amount of time to pay for a product, or
Yep, just have access to the highest quality diamonds that are out there. As part of the program also too, we were able to take courses from De Beers, so we know more about kind of the history of diamonds and how to evaluate diamonds, and it just so it really is a wonderful process and they also have helped us get in front of retailers as well. So it's just really been a comprehensive program that I would highly recommend anyone who is in the BIPOC community to apply, and to really put their best foot forward and make the most effort they can into getting into the program, because it really is supportive of you as a business person, and it's just a wonderful opportunity.
So to go back and link that from beads to diamonds, that's a huge transition from beads to diamonds. Steep learning curve. If you've never worked with stones, and all of a sudden, quality. What's a quality stone? Anyone that looks like tell me it's a diamond, it's a quality stone.
That's so fun. Yeah. So I guess there is a little intermediary step there, because I started working with beads, and then I graduated from that to working with beads and semi-precious stones, faceted stones that were set as well. So even in the chandelier behind me, there's Venetian glass that is highlighted with 18 karat gold, but there's also semi-precious stones in that as well. Mm-hmm. So there was a little bit more of a natural progression in terms of working with set stones and having castings, and kind of not doing just only beaded jewelry before I
Yeah,
started with the diamonds.
yeah. Uh, the kind of business that you're in now, does that require another level of, say, insurance? I mean, if you're making a deal and you're bringing home all of this big pouch of whatever it is, and I'm working in my studios.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it also involves having a safe and tighter inventory controls and that sort of thing. So yeah, so it's a whole, it really is, it's a different way of working that's a little bit more focused.
Hmm.
Um,
So what about
so
your What about your classmates that finished at the same time, and they're probably struggling designing buildings and parts of buildings, and you say, "I'm cool. I'm traveling all over, and I'm doing all these kind of things." No, 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 no.
That's so funny. Well, I think yeah. I mean, it's interesting now. Although when I graduated, all of my friends either went to work for large architectural firms, or they went and worked on Wall Street. And I moved back to my parents' home. Was in designing in my bedroom and working on various things and so funny. I mean, I was there, coming up with all these great designs. And my mom said to me one day, you know what, Dorian, I think you'd sell so much more if you actually left the house. And that was my inspiration to actually go out. And I was like, okay, yeah. So at some point, I've got to show these things to
Yeah,
people,
I got to go
and
out
they've yeah,
and knock on some doors, right?
exactly. That's step two. Step two. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
that's a different skill set, because the skill set of the designing piece, and now that's the relationship management piece, building clientele,
Mhm.
connecting with clients, understanding clients' needs. Was that a
Mhm.
huge step to transition to?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is, I mean, most people, I guess, go into design industries because they like to design, but
Yeah.
then the marketing piece is something that
Mm,
is generally not in people's skill set. And I think if you do have that sort of that natural inclination to sell and to market, then that is just so much to your benefit.
mm.
But that was sort of not where that was not me. That was not
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. So would you suggest someone that's looking to move to move into the creative side to take a business course, a basic business course? Because you mentioned, I didn't know what an invoice was. Now that's something that normally happens. I mean, because I
Mhm,
see people online that say, "I want to start a business," and I said, "Well, what kind of business?" Well, I'm looking to, and it's just dreams, pipe dreams, on and on and on. But
mhm,
when you get down to the minutia of it, what are you going to do? Who's going to bill? Who are you going to send the invoice? What kind of dating are you going to have? 30 days,
mhm,
15 days, pay upon receipt, all these things that if you
mhm,
don't have that so-called business degree, you may miss that. So would you
mhm.
suggest someone take a basic business course, accounting, us, whatever?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that business courses would, and now again, it's just such a different world. I mean, there's so many great courses online that you can
Yeah.
take to kind of give you that background. I also think for me, what would have been really helpful from the beginning was just working for another designer and being
Mm,
able to, make mistakes on someone else's time and dime,
yeah.
and to be able to understand kind of all the levels of work and that kind of go into building a successful business. That would have really been a great instruction
Hmm.
for me as well.
So are you mentoring the next generation of jewelry designers, or what are you doing along those lines? You kind of walked into it and learned it from the ground up.
Mhm.
Are you making it easier for the next group of people, or how are you giving back?
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to. I'm definitely trying to. So actually, when I moved to the West Coast, to Oakland from New York, I actually put my business on pause for a little bit, and I taught low income women how to start their own businesses,
Oh, wow.
which was incredibly rewarding. And then I moved also into helping other consulting with other businesses and kind of helping them get to the next level. And then I restarted my business, and with an eye to kind of streamlining operations so that I would be able to not only run my business, but also do mentor women who are
Yeah.
in the jewelry industry. So
Mm.
right now I'm working with Women's Jewelry Association, and I have a mentor there who I'm helping start her business, like literally from the ground up, and talking about helping her give voice to what inspires her, and helping her really start her first collection, and get marketing sort of aligning that with what she's doing, and that sort of thing. And I'm always open to helping people who contact me with questions and want to know about resources and that sort of thing, because I do think it's just so important to have those questions answered, and to have that network. And it's all about access and resources. And as much as we can kind of open that up to people, the more everyone benefits from that, by having people's talents really utilized and appreciated and recognized. Like that's a gift to the world.
It is, I've always been a big believer of, if you've gotten to a certain point, who are you pulling up? I mean,
Mhm.
what is what capacity are you using your skills and what you've learned, all the hard knocks, so that you could possibly prevent someone else from,
Mhm.
running into a bus or whatever it is, and moving to whatever that proverbial next level is.
Mhm.
Um, how do you? So you talked about designing the earrings that we talked about, and the beads, and even Marcus picked it up. How do you stay in the zone to be creative? I mean, if you're doing business now, invoicing, billing, accounting, and then you switch over to say, okay, now I've got to go into the zone, and I'm going to go do all of this. H- That's a switch, right? Switch
Mhm.
mindsets, or
Yeah. So when I restarted my business, it was definitely with a mindset to make sure that I had the people surrounding me who would be able to basically helm the parts of the business that did not have to do with design, so that I could focus more on design, which is what I love in my strength. And I think it really is important to make sure that your team, and however you may define that, and it may not even be people who are actually like on your payroll, but maybe it's vendors that you're working with, but really looking at them as partners and treating them as such, so that you can benefit from their knowledge, and that they can really kind of help you. So that's what has kind of enabled me to be able to really focus more on design. And I think it's always a little bit of a trade-off. You always want to be spending more time on design and doing that. But the reality of it is that running a business involves running a business, no matter what your product is. Yeah. So
yeah,
that's kind of part
yeah.
and parcel of it. But it's funny. One of my friends who recently sold her business is just a really interesting person. And as part of what I do now is every other month I feature women who are, I think, doing really interesting things, and I write articles on them and sort of share their business insights as kind of also, again, part of that outreach, and just really wanting to help to elevate women
Yeah.
and share stories and demystify what people are doing. And and she was saying that one of the pivotal things that one of her mentors told her as she was starting was, it's not how, but who. Meaning, if you're thinking that you don't have the capacity to do something because you don't know how to do it,
Hmm.
that mindset is one that, again, puts a lot of stress on you and puts a focus on you that
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily have to be that way. If
Hmm.
you can instead think of who, or the type of person, or someone who has a skill set that could be useful to you, that kind of opens up your thinking process or your thought process on the problem, and it enables you to kind of figure out how other people can help you with it, which is a way to kind of go forward in a business. I mean, it really does take a village.
Yeah.
So as long as you can, as much as you can open up that mindset and identify talented people to help and support you in any way that makes sense. The farther you can go, and it sometimes it does mean hiring people who are, quite frankly, much smarter than you are. That's the reality of it.
A day. Hiring people much smarter than you are. All I do is show up and talk. He handles all the back end, tells me exactly what to do, when to start, everything. But I think lots of times, when you're in business, you tend to communicate with more people that are in business. And I see people, and sometimes I talk to people and they're struggling with updating the website, updating this, and I'm like, why don't you just find someone to do that? That's not your level of expertise. Your revenue is going to be driven by the knowledge you're giving to a client. So have someone come in and do that. But I think lots of times people tend to think that that's going to be a huge salary kind of thing. So as you said, it could be a project basis or whatever it is. But you don't have to go it alone and try and do everything by yourself. Do you kind of feel the same way?
No, definitely. And I think that sometimes it's not knowing that you can hire people to do those kind of pieces of the business that just really aren't your strength. Yeah. And I think that sometimes it's also a question of pride. And I think that also sometimes it's an issue of people. I think all of us in business read these articles about business people and the way that they start and what they do. And the impression that in general that we're left with is that they handle every aspect of the business, that they are the genius behind the business, that they execute everything from point A to point Z, and that they still have time for a wonderful life and travel and look great. I mean, and that's just not exactly, and that's just not the reality. So I mean, as much as I can, like I said, demystify that and let people know that that's not really kind of what happens. And I just think it's just one of those things that, it's so unattainable for everyone. So it's just funny that it kind of keeps perpetuating itself, and that people think that you have to be involved in every aspect of your business to have a successful one, and that just isn't the case. I mean, you just can't. You really got to manage your resources better than that.
Well, see, that's the press releases, that's the branding piece, the genius behind it. But the genius behind the curtain, kind of like Wizard of Oz, you got a whole slew of people doing a little piece of this, a little piece of this, and it kind of, that's the foundation that kind of keeps you out there to kind of present this image. I call it the iceberg theory. You see the iceberg and everything that goes under it. They have no idea what goes on under there. Exactly. So let's take a commercial break. Then we're going to come back and we'll take it a little further.
Great.
Okay, cool.
Identify and book the world's best speakers for your next event. MENA Speakers is the leading speakers and MC bureau in the Middle East. We bring global talent to the region and have established the region as a key global hub for speakers. Inspire and motivate your audience. Find exactly what you are looking for by working closely with us to assist you in understanding the cost-benefit analysis tied to selecting a speaker for any event. Ensure that your audience is educated, engaged, and empowered. Connect with us for a quick response and tailored advice. Book your speakers now.
Do you have an all-star HR team? You may feel your team is already performing at a high level, but let's take a closer look. Would your company's top leaders and employees agree that your HR team are operating at a high level? Are team members able to influence top executives on difficult topics? Are team members' business and strategy focused on the challenges the organization is facing? Does the executive team trust your direct reports as advisors on human capital issues? If you can answer yes to these questions, you have built an outstanding team. If you feel there is room for improvement, Strategy Focused Group can create a custom development program to elevate the quality of your HR team. We use HCI certification programs as well as non-certified HRBP MBA Masterclass to give your team a laser focus on the business and strategy. Please email us at info@strategyfocusedgroup.com.
So let's talk about a typical day for the jewelry designer. You know, you're going into the zone. I'm going to go here to do this today. I come in the morning. What does your day look like in doing the kind of work you do, creative work?
Well, it's fun.
What I mean, is it structured, or are you just kind of, I'm feeling it and I feel I need to do this today or whatever?
No, it's pretty structured. For me, the day is generally spent looking at new stones and trying to plan ahead for new designs. It's checking in on marketing and the campaigns that we're running, and then I find actually that for me, the time that I've got to carve out for really doing design work is actually in the evenings, because during the day there's so many people and things that are kind of pulling at me and things that I've got to do that it's really hard to kind of carve out any time that is my quiet time where I can be able to be creative. And I think that, and also for me, I'm just more creative in the evenings.
Okay.
And I think that most people in the creative fields have times that they, or I guess people in general, know which times that they are kind of most productive, and should try to schedule their workday around that so that they can really make sure that they are leveraging that time when they're, kind of drawing from their strengths whenever is possible. And especially now that people are working from home more frequently, I think that's a little bit easier.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that about timing, because I had that conversation earlier this morning when I was talking with a client out in Singapore, and we were talking about timings, and I said they were more of an evening person, more so, because I wanted to schedule a meeting early in the morning. They said, no, I do later. And we were kind of talking through the dynamics of that, because when you work globally, in my office here, I have a clock. I have 5 clocks for every time zone I work in, kind of like the airport.
Oh, wow.
But,
okay.
yes,
Your favorite spot.
I need to know what time I'm talking to when I talk to people. But what I get from that is that we all have our own inner workings as to what works for us. Like, I'm an early person. 4:45 in the morning, and when I'm in Dubai, I'm doing a walk for maybe 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that works for me. But I'm not good in the evening. I mean, in the evening, I'm pretty much done.
Right.
4 o'clock on, I'm pretty much done, because when I'm working in an office pre-COVID, my hours were normally I get in the office at 9 o'clock, and 3 o'clock, I'm done. I'm not doing anything else, and I just close it all down.
Yep.
So that comes back to your side, what you were just saying.
Yeah. I'm definitely the other end of that spectrum. Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So for someone who's struggling in school, and the reason I'm asking this, as we begin to close out, when we adopted a high school in New York, we adopted the Art and Design High School for a couple of years. And I would talk to parents, because we were very engaged with the students there, their parents, and one parent told me that she was forcing her son to go to school to become a teacher, and the son wanted to become a designer. And that was the conflict they were having. But what changed her mind when our chief design officer gave the commencement address, and she talked through the struggle, she talked through the parents who were trying to drive her into a certain situation to become a teacher or whatever it was, a more structured kind of work. You know, you'll always have a check, all those kinds of things, safety, security. And she said it changed my mind when I heard that particular story. So can you give me some insight if you had to speak to a parent and some child wanted to be a creative person and you're trying to push them, you know, how many accountants do you notice doing something else? How many lawyers do you know? How many architects do you notice doing something else? What advice would you give as a closing question?
Yeah, I think, I think that I would, as much as advice helps, I think it's just really a matter of representation. That a lot of the fear that parents have is just rooted in the fact that they don't want their child to suffer. They want their child to be successful, and in most cases, they also want them to be even more successful than they are. I mean, they pour so much into their children, and I think that's really the fear is what kind of makes them steer their kids into other areas that they see as being safer and more secure. I think it's very rare that people don't want their kids to do something in the design world because it has to do with prestige or something like that. It's more just not knowing how to help their child and to not knowing not having access to those resources that would really help kind of build the foundation for that child's business. So, I would also just say, I'm sure within your network, there are people who are doing, these sort of things or similar things, like talk to them, reach out to them, read up on that that area that they want to go in. I'm sure that that there are stories that they can draw from and that sort of thing. Are there people in the industry who could help your child, mentor your child, or that there's so many resources now that we can draw from. And I do think that's why it's really important for I would say for designers of color in particular, to be out there and to also kind of help the younger generation, just because it is just so, running a business and starting a business is just so difficult in and of itself. And if you don't have those models of representation, if you don't have those connections to people who have gone before you, then those issues become almost insurmountable. So I think that we can all kind of help by expanding our networks and really making sure that we're building those connections to help the next generation.
Yeah, the next generation as it comes through. Dorian, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. Just hold on for a second as we close out. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Ron. Just so enjoyed being here with you today and being able to talk with you again.
Yes. Thank you.